Hi, in this example we're going to discuss the time it takes for a pendulum to swing back and forth. So the time it takes for a pendulum to swing back and forth is represented by the given function s of x equals 2 pi times the square root of x divided by 32. What this means is if we take a pendulum at a certain length and push it to swing back and forth, this length here from the top to the pendulum itself is x feet. The time it takes if you pull it and let it swing back once, there, back, forth, back, for one time it will take s of x. One time. Meaning that if I plug in or substitute in any length for a pendulum, I should be able to obtain how long it would take for the pendulum to swing one time. Well, this is exactly the case in Part A. Part A says how many seconds will a 3-foot pendulum swing back and forth one time, and round your answer to 1 decimal place. So a 3-foot pendulum means they would give the length of the pendulum x, and we would be looking for s of x, how long. So Part A is we need to find s of x when x is equal to 3 feet. Well, if s of x is given to be 2 pi times the square root of x divided by 32, then s of 3 would be equal to 2 pi times the square root of 3 divided by 32. If I put this in the calculator, I'll get a number that looks like something like 1.9238 ... However, this wants us to round to 1 decimal place. So I'm going to have to round to the 10th place. Looking at my test digit, which would be the next decimal place 2, since that's less than 5, we'll go ahead and keep the 9. And so this becomes s of 3 is going to be 1.9 seconds. So essentially it's going to take 1.9 seconds for the pendulum to swing back and forth once for a 3-foot pendulum. Okay. Part B says, well, what if we give you the time? What if we tell you it takes 8 seconds for this pendulum to swing back and forth one time? What would be the length of the pendulum? Well, we know the length of the pendulum is given to be the variable x. So this means they must be giving us s of x. So essentially, we need to find x when the number of seconds given, s of x, is equal to 8. I know the function s of x is equal to 2 pi times the square root of x over 32. And if s of x is equal to 8, then I need to replace the entire left side with 8. So therefore, 8 would equal 2 pi times the square root of x over 32. The first thing I want to do is reduce out this coefficient of 2 pi, so I'll go ahead and multiply each side by 1 over 2 pi. Therefore, I get 8 divided by 2 pi equals, the 2 pi's reduce out on the right, and I'm left with the square root of x over 32. Since the x is in the radicand of the square root, now I have to square each side. And be careful, make sure you do both sides. Therefore, I get 8 over 2 pi squared equals the square root of something squared is just the radicand itself. And now I can easily multiply each side by that denominator of 32 and get 32 times 8 over 2 pi squared equal to x. Now, since they want us to round to 1 decimal place, we'll go ahead and put this in the calculator, and you should get a number similar to 51.8764 ... But since they want us to round to 1 decimal place, I'm going to round to the 10th place again, but now the 7 here will be my test digit. Because 7 is more than 5, I must round this 8 up by 1. So therefore, x is going to be equal to 51.9 feet. What does this mean? This means that it will take 8 seconds for a 51.9 foot pendulum to swing back and forth once.